Imagine you're a Soviet tank commander, deep in the Fulda Gap during the Cold War. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly, a sound unlike any other pierces the air. It's not the familiar roar of a jet engine. It's a terrifying, guttural B-R-R-R-T. You know instantly what it is. It's the sound of the A-10 Thunderbolt Seguno, better known as the Warthog. And for you, it's the sound of impending doom. Today, we're diving into the dark history of how one of America's ugliest, slowest, yet most beloved aircraft became the stuff of nightmares for Soviet armored divisions. This isn't just about a plane. It's about psychological warfare waged from the sky. To understand the fear, you first have to understand the mission. The A-10 was born from a single, brutal purpose: to kill tanks. In the 1970s, NATO strategists looked at the plains of Europe and saw a chilling reality. A seemingly endless wave of Soviet tanks, ready to pour through the Fulda Gap and overwhelm Western forces. The numbers were staggering. How could they possibly stop such a blitzkrieg? The answer wasn't another tank. It wasn't more infantry. The answer was a flying tank killer. The Air Force's existing jets were too fast, too fragile. They were designed for dogfights at 30,000 feet, not for getting down and dirty in the mud and chaos of a ground war. They needed something that could fly low, fly slow, take a beating, and dish out unbelievable punishment. And to the Fairchild Republic, A-10 Warthog. This plane was never meant to be pretty. It was designed around its main weapon, the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel Gatling cannon that is, to this day, one of the most powerful aircraft cannons ever built. This gun is so massive that the plane is essentially built around it. It is longer than a Volkswagen Beetle and fires 30mm depleted uranium rounds at a mind-boggling rate of nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. When that cannon fires, it doesn't just make a noise, it creates a shockwave. The BRRRRT sound is legendary. It's the sound of hundreds of armor-piercing shells ripping through the air, each one capable of punching through the top armor of a Soviet T-72 tank like it was tinfoil. Soviet doctrine relied on mass and speed. Their tanks, like the T-64 and T-72, were formidable machines, but they had a critical vulnerability. Their top armor was relatively thin. They were designed to withstand frontal attacks from other tanks on the ground. They were not designed to fight a monster from above. The A-10 exploited this weakness perfectly. It wasn't a high-altitude bomber dropping dumb bombs from miles up. The Warthog pilot was a hunter. They would use the terrain, hugging hills and valleys to stay off radar, popping up just long enough to acquire a target. Then, they would dive. This is where the psychological terror truly begins. For the tank crew inside their steel box, the world is already a confusing mess of radio chatter and limited vision. Then, that sound starts. It's a sound that signals a threat you can't see and can't fight. You can't outrun it. Your tank's main gun can't elevate high enough to shoot at it. Your machine gun is mostly useless against its armored cockpit. Former Soviet tankers have described this feeling. It was a sense of utter helplessness. They were trained to fight other tanks, to engage in armored combat. But the A-10 changed the rules. It wasn't a fair fight, it was an execution. And the Warthog was notoriously tough. Its pilots flew in what they called a titanium bathtub, an armored cockpit designed to withstand direct hits from anti-aircraft cannons. The engines were mounted high and wide, making them harder to hit. It had redundant flight systems and self-sealing fuel tanks. Stories of A-10s returning to base with massive holes in their wings, missing parts of their tail, and one engine shot out, a legendary. This survivability meant that even if you managed to hit it, it would likely keep coming. This combination of lethality and resilience created a mythos. Soviet intelligence knew all about the A-10's capabilities. They studied it, they developed countermeasures. But on a human level, the fear it inspired was a weapon in itself. Tank commanders knew that a squadron of Warthogs could wipe out an entire company of tanks in a matter of minutes, all while shrugging off most of what they could throw back at it. During the Cold War, exercises and war games consistently showed the devastating impact of the A-10. It was the great equalizer. NATO might have been outnumbered on the ground, but the Warthog promised to turn any Soviet armored thrust into a smoldering graveyard of burnt-out tanks. The plan was for A-10s to operate from hidden, dispersed airfields close to the front lines, rearming and refueling quickly to get back into the fight. They were envisioned as a constant, terrifying presence over the battlefield. When the Cold War ended and the A-10 finally saw major combat in the Gulf War, it proved its worth beyond anyone's wildest expectations. It was a turkey shoot. The Warthogs decimated Iraqi armored columns. The images of the Highway of Death, a long road littered with the destroyed tanks and vehicles of the retreating Iraqi army, were a chilling real-world demonstration of what Soviet commanders had feared for decades. A-10s were responsible for a huge percentage of the armored vehicles destroyed during that conflict. Pilots reported Iraqi tanks trying to hide, their crews abandoning their vehicles the moment they heard the Warthog's distinctive engine sound. The fear was real. The A-10 had earned its reputation. The dark promise of its design had been fulfilled on the battlefield. So, while modern warfare has shifted towards stealth jets, drones, and long-range precision strikes, the A-10 Warthog remains a symbol of a different era. An era of brutal, close-quarters combat. It's a testament to a design philosophy that prioritized function over form, lethality over speed, and raw, terrifying power over elegance. For the men who would have faced it, sitting in their steel coffins on the plains of Europe, the A-10 was more than just an aircraft. It was the sound of the sky being torn apart, the personification of a technologically superior enemy, and the ultimate symbol of their own vulnerability. It was, and remains, a true master of ground attack, and a terrifying chapter in the history of modern warfare. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into military history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the darker side of the battlefield. Let us know in the comments what other iconic weapons you'd like to see us cover. See you next time.